Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Hope you're having a great morning, a great start to your weekend. As always, I'm going to hit you up with a weekend forecast on this Saturday morning. Really, it's important to do so because it's a pretty active weather weekend. There's a severe weather threat around in Texas, around the Houston area. There is a tornado threat, a 5% chance of a tornado, 25 miles in any given location in the area I'm about to show you from the Storm Prediction Center. And there's also a snowstorm that's going to be going on for portions of the Northeast. It's going to set the tone for the holidays, going to drop down a nice blanket of some snow in certain areas that likely will last all the way through the rest of the holidays. So we're going to talk about that is moving in currently. And then we're going to talk about tomorrow, which will be a day where temperatures may be falling throughout the day for certain areas, especially if you're in the Carolinas. So there's going to be some active weather this weekend. So we're going to break all that down. This is going to be a longer than usual weekend forecast. Just we're trying to cover everything. So hope you're up and at it. Hope you're having a great start. Hope you're having a blessed morning. And thank you all for tuning in. If you guys have not subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button. Like the video if you like it. As usual, this evening I will give y'all another update on what I'm seeing on the models as we round out 2021. So I appreciate all the amazing support. Thank you all for everything. Really just woke up feeling blessed of everything I've accomplished with this channel. Thanks to y'all. So really appreciate it. You got anything that I can pray about, please put in the comments. Gives me an opportunity to pray for you guys, gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's get rolling here. So let's start off by looking at the Storm Prediction Center, which I woke up and there is a slight risk now. I hope I don't mess up the name of this city. I always say Crispy. Corpus Christi, stretching from Corpus Christi all the way through Houston, all the way through southwestern Louisiana. There is a slight risk now, and there's also a moderate risk for a large area going all the way from the Panhandle of Florida all the way to almost Brownsville, Texas. And then there'll be thunderstorms, even in just a general thunderstorm risk outside this today. So what's significant about this is the elevated tornado threat in and around the Houston area. A little bit, areas points west and a large area points east in the coastal areas. And I'll show you why in this video. So if you're in and around Houston, definitely stay tuned to, I'm going to talk about the tornado threat before I talk about the snow threat. But yeah, there's a pretty significant chance of a wind threat with these storms too, as there looks like there's going to be some isolated supercells that potentially develop along this front that continues to sag south. And there is just so much warm and moist air surging ahead. It's going to make for a very warm day for a lot of areas of the southeast. Hail threat is, there too, because these are going to be supercellular in nature, and some of them are going to become discrete. So that means you're going to have some rotating updrafts, some larger updrafts, which normally promote more of a hail threat. But we'll talk here and look at the latest HRRR here in a second. But there is dense fog advisories going on here in the gray areas, and then the entire state of South Carolina, a good portion of Georgia, almost the entire state of North Carolina, areas of Virginia. This normally happens when you have a surge of warmer, moist air ahead of a cold front, which is what's occurring right here. It creates a lot of moisture in the air. Therefore, the air becomes super saturated. Therefore, you get a lot of fog and a lot of moisture in the air, and that's what a lot of people are waking up in the Carolinas today with, and portions of the South. And then you see these blue areas, winter weather advisories. Those pink areas are winter storm warnings. Good for y'all. This is the areas that should have snow on the ground this time of the year, and I'm happy for you guys. I know I've had one person from I think New Hampshire that's commented that follows my channel. Thank you, by the way. It says they're getting excited about the slopes up there and just the conditions up there. So you are going to get a nice snow event. Nothing unheard of for that region, but as cold as it's going to get this week coming up, I have a feeling that most of it will stay on the ground. Now, for you folks in Boston, man, y'all are just at the surface and aloft are just going to be a little too warm. You're going to start off with some snow, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So let's get rolling here. So this is the latest long-range HRRR model. Now the 12Z is coming out, but I'm just showing y'all guys the 06Z. Not much is going to change, but you're going here in time. You're getting into about early afternoon, about 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Look at all these storms firing up in the south central U.S. These can be very strong. They can be tornadic supercells, and we'll get a little closer look on that here in a second. And then you just have general showers and storms develop here in Alabama and Georgia. And then look at the snowstorm going on in northern New England. And even in Massachusetts, you know, if you're outside of Boston to the west of Boston, a good burst of snow can fall before you get this low pressure that moves over portions of the state, which obviously brings more warm air to the surface and aloft, and pretty much makes the temperatures at all areas at the lower levels of the atmosphere and at the surface just too warm, and it switches it over to a cold rain, and then maybe some backside snow can fall through. But if you look down here in drought areas of North Carolina and South Carolina, which is still the case, I think we'll have some beneficial rain and showers and maybe some storms rolling through overnight with this cold front. And hopefully certain areas, especially the areas that are the most driest, will get the most rain. But this storm continues to move through. Nice snow event for Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, areas of upstate New York, areas of the more higher terrain of Massachusetts. A nice snow event for you guys. We're going to get closer and look a little bit closer at this event going forward here. But let's look at the tornado threat. So if you're in and around Houston to Lake Charles area, watch what happens as we're getting into, you know, around the noon time frame. You get these big time thunderstorms that blow up here, and these can really have some spin to them. And I tell you what, these look kind of ominous right here on the HRRR model. They're a little bit discreet ahead of this main line, and these can be some very powerful storms. So you know, if you're looking on the radar in Houston, you see some individual storms on radar, you have any type of tornado warnings, watch out. This could be a sneaky event. This is an event that, yeah, I mean, has been talked about a little bit, but it has really trended up here in the last, 12 hours. I mean, this is a pretty elevated risk of a tornado threat in and around Houston, which is a very large city, high populated city. And what happens here is when you get later in the afternoon and evening, these storms are kind of congealed together, and then maybe a flood threat arises in and around Houston. So when I say in and around Houston, I'm talking about surrounding areas 100 miles outside of Houston, any given direction. So be careful in and around that area today. Very warm, very moist around this area. Conditions are favorable for rotating thunderstorms. So just be careful. And even into Louisiana, a flood threat comes after the tornado threat. So be careful in that area. It's not being talked about much, but it's definitely there. The tornado parameter as high as, maybe 1 to 2. Nothing too crazy, but like I said, this is an event that's not going to show up much on this. And this could be a sneaky tornado threat. I'm not talking about an outbreak, but a definite threat. As far as our snow event up top here in the Northeast for you guys, as we're getting into 9, 10, 11, this is around the noon time frame. Moisture really starts to get into Boston. I have a feeling that if we look at the latest radar in around Boston, you're going to have some moisture move in before noon. I definitely think so. What it starts out as, I don't know. I don't know if this is reaching the ground. There's a little bit of dry air that has to be saturated before this really hitting the ground. But, just south of Hartford, Connecticut, you have a report of some sleet falling here, so you might just start off as flat out sleet, maybe a burst of snow in Boston. I really think it's quickly once the dew point in the wet bulb is met, and whatever y'all fall to, I think that's what y'all stay at, and then actually gradually warm. I think what's going on here is I think y'all got too much mild air coming off the ocean, and it's definitely affecting y'all aloft, especially around the 800, 700 millibar area, which is, 5, 6, 7,000 feet in the air. But this will continue to move through. Beautiful, beautiful snow. It's going to be a wet snow, big old fat snowflakes. This is definitely not going to be a super dry snow unless you're way up in the higher elevations, way up here where you're plenty cold enough for snow. But, you're getting into this afternoon, this evening, and the snow is still falling across upstate New York. And Concord, Manchester, New Hampshire, just a really beautiful snow. Portland, Maine, getting a lot of snow. This reaches all the way probably up to Caribou with some light snow, and it could be quite heavy. You see with this yellow showing up, that's very heavy precipitation. So whoever's just north of that rain and snow line here in Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire could get some really heavy snow. But if you're in, if you're in like even outside of Boston to the west of Boston, you're going to get a brief period where you're going to get probably a couple hours where the snowfall rates are probably 1 to 2 inches an hour before it switches to sleet. And then I think it's going to end as rain and maybe at the very end into some light snow, and then some very cold air filters in behind it. But I'll show you what soundings look like just before the event as we look at around 11 a.m. around Boston. And what's going on is that the surface are way too warm. I mean, snow can fall at 41 degrees, and sleet definitely can, but you know, the wet bulb is that blue line right here, which is basically above 30 degrees. So, you know, there is a little bit of a warm nose, but that's not the problem early on. As you're moving forward here, and the heavier precipitation begins to move in around 3 p.m., you look at this now, and at this point, the wet bulb has been met. You're at 36 degrees. You'll probably have a sleet, maybe some snow mixed in, depending on how heavy the precipitation is, and mostly rain falling because at the surface, the dew point's been met at 36 degrees. It's just too warm. So at this point, around early afternoon, you're probably done gotten rid of the snow, and then you move further in time. You get into the 8 p.m. range as this low pressure is getting closer to Boston. You click around the Boston soundings. At this time, you have a stout warm nose that at the surface, you know, the 800, 700 range in the atmosphere, millibar range in the atmosphere, which is several thousand feet up in the air, a little bit higher than what we call the low levels. You have a warm nose in place that goes above the freezing line, which means there's a period in the atmosphere where anything frozen melts. Now, it's not really stout, but it gets even more stout as this low pressure moves over. But at the surface, it's not like you have any deep cold air just above the surface. You really don't. I mean, it briefly goes below freezing, but then you have a pretty large area right here at the surface and just above us that goes well above freezing very fast. And the surface is sitting, you're showing only 38 degrees around 8 p.m. And that's definitely. And then by the time you get into midnight, it's even warmer. So you needed, for Boston, you really needed this low pressure to be real well south and where more cold air could filter in for the north, and that's just not the case. But, you know, as far as snowfall, this is going to be a beautiful snowfall for the ski resorts up here, for the higher terrain, for those, you know, postcards that we see in these movies and stuff like that, these Hallmark movies. Beautiful snow that's going to set the tone for the rest of the holidays, I really think. Because I really don't think, I think if anything's going to melt, there's probably going to be a brief period tomorrow after the snow stops, before the Arctic air really plunges in for these areas. But I don't think you're going to have much snow melt for anybody. And then I think it just mainly stays on the ground. So lucky for you guys. Now, as far as temperatures, today, very warm temperatures as a warm sector surges almost all the way into Pennsylvania, and then it collapses as the cold air moves in behind this cold front that's promoting all this these disturbances as far as weather. What's interesting to me is this is around 11 a.m. Look at the Carolinas. Look at this cold air filtering from the northeast. So, you know, you'll wake up in the 60s probably tomorrow, say in the Carolinas, especially in South Carolina. And then throughout the day, the temperature will drop into the 50s. So it will be your classic day. Well, the temperatures actually drop throughout the day in portions of the Carolinas and even Georgia. So if you wake up tomorrow and it's like, daggum, it's warm, and by the time you get to 3, 4 p.m. after church or just after activities and you're settling down for the weekend, you say, dang, it's gotten colder. It has. So be expecting that. Winds are going to shift out the northeast and temperatures are going to drop. But look at this Arctic air that moves through over the snowpack that really just makes that snowpack go nowhere. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. And I'll keep y'all updated tonight. I can tell you not much changed on the models overnight. In fact, it's just gotten even a little less boring as far as hardly no activity or nothing to talk about. But things are just flip-flopping everywhere, and we got to figure out what's going to happen. I think a lot of people are struggling with it too. But y'all have a blessed day. Stay safe, and thank y'all for everything.